Star Wars: The Last Jedi is the newest Star Wars film, and it just might be my favorite Star Wars film ever.
This is not going to go the way you think. Fulfill your destiny.
So The Last Jedi is directed by Rian Johnson, and he's done three previous movies, two that I really liked, Brick and Looper, and one that's just kind of mediocre. But he is actually only the third person to both write and direct a Star Wars movie. It's kind of impressive when you think about that. And I mean, especially because he did such an amazing job. I will say that this movie, I think, is the first Star Wars movie since The Empire Strikes Back that doesn't lean incredibly heavily on A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie, on like different plot points and different structures and different things from it. This is really the first movie since then, since The Empire Strikes Back, the second movie, which did something completely different. Even in the original trilogy, the third one leans very heavily on the first Star Wars. And I love that this one is almost completely original. But I mean, they still do things, there's still like some callbacks, there's still a little bit of fan service. But really, the structure of it has never been seen in Star Wars movie. And it's very different from a lot of movies. And that's made it so impressive because while I was watching this film, I was just so absorbed into it and enthralled by the movie that I just sat in my chair watching the screen with no idea of what was going to happen next. And it was just an amazing theater-going experience. Something that haven't quite happened in years. Where, I mean, if you watch as many movies as I do, and you think about them and critique them, movies they all seem kind of similar. They follow the same sort of plot line, the structure. Different genres follow the really similar structures, and you don't really are ever surprised by anything. It's very seldom that I can be surprised by a movie. And I mean, there's no big plot twist in Last Jedi, but from scene to scene, when these crazy things are happening, again, no spoilers in my review, but when these crazy things are happening, I didn't know what was going to happen next. I mean, I know certain things probably wouldn't happen because I know some characters have contracts for another movie, but I really didn't know what they were going to do with it. And I love that. So the whole cast is back, of course. And I will say the standouts for me were Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Daisy Ridley. Everyone else did great. I probably throw Oscar Isaac into that too, where they were all really good, even better than they were previously. And I know Mark Hamill, I mean, there are some fans may not like things they did with his character, but I think it's tough to do anything else if you go into this movie 30 years later and there's still an evil force that are trying to control the galaxy. You can't have him he previously was a hero. And so, I mean, there's by Lucas not making a new trilogy earlier, you couldn't really go with what Lucas originally intended for the character. So you have to do something different, and I really like what they did. And, Carrie Fisher was also glorious in this. And I really liked that, they must have a really tough time figuring out what exactly they wanted to do. Would they change things about this movie because of her death, or would they just let what she did stand and deal with it in the next movie? And I really like what they did, and it's a great kind of send-off for her because she is amazing in this. And there's some beautiful scenes with her throughout the movie, especially one relatively towards the beginning. Is great. And Daisy Ridley, I think she is even better than she was in the first movie, because she has a lot to do in this, and she brought the drama and the passion and the really good acting, and she was great. And Oscar Isaac, he was pretty cool too, because they did a lot of things with his character where she plays more of a role, but it's also that he's kind of like the cocky guy, and that sometimes these things he does, he has to like be reined back in, and there's like consequences, and I really like that. Honestly, one of my favorite things about this film is that, in all kinds of movies, there's always like things happen in the plot to drive it along, and like, people make mistakes or do stupid things. A lot of times they're like plot holes. They're like, why would that character do that? That is so stupid. But they have to do that to drive along the plot, But in this, when things happen and people make mistakes, they make mistakes because of their pride, of their anger, of their sadness, of their love, of all different emotions that they drive a person, and because of that, they make mistakes from it. And those mistakes have consequences. And I loved it. Like, for each character, for the good characters, for the evil characters, for the characters in between, they make mistakes, and they aren't plot holes. They make mistakes because of the characters that they are. And I love seeing that in the film. Because, it's not easy to do. Like, to actually give them a character motive to make a mistake instead of just having them make a mistake to drive the plot. Like, really, Rian Johnson, throughout this movie, showed how talented he is as a director and a writer. Because, it is almost perfect for me. And this feels like a Rian Johnson movie. It doesn't feel like, sometimes, especially with the Disney films, and especially even though I love Marvel superhero films, a lot of them can feel like they were kind of driven through the machine of Disney. And they all kind of have that similar thing. But in this one, it feels like this is Rian Johnson. This is his baby. And I loved it for that. And there's some humor, and some people may not like that humor. But I think it really worked for this. It wasn't too much, but the scenes that they were there were really good. And that, like, some of the characters spoke to some of the characters what they did. I know some people may not like something that Oscar Isaac does in the beginning, but I think that stuff is funny. And later, part of my funniest moments for me involved the caretakers of the Jedi Temple Island. And there's some really small little things that I thought were hilarious. And kind of related to that, though, is there's even more practical effects, I think, than in The Force Awakens. Because, I don't think almost all of the alien characters are like puppets. And maybe some CGI, and maybe some that they modified along with the practical. But these practical effects, they look so good. They're, especially one character that pops up. They look so good that it makes me just even angrier at Lucas for messing with the original trilogy, which I have the despecialized editions, the Blu-rays that I made myself behind me. And in those, they're so perfect, the original films. And, in the special editions, they added all this horrible CGI. And then when he did the prequels, they're just so full of CGI that it just looks almost like a cartoon, and it's unbelievable. And I love that, what they're doing with the new trilogy by bringing back the practical effects and making it look like the original trilogy, but updated. Like, it's great. And there's some great space battles in this. And some different twists, things that I don't think anyone have really ever done before, that looked really cool. But there's stuff that kind of call them back to the old space battles, but they're bringing them into the present day, and it's great. However, where I really think that Rian Johnson's directing shines is in some of the action. Like the lightsaber action, like the hand-on-hand sort of stuff. It is honestly the best action I've seen in a long time, like in years. Like, for a big American blockbuster movie to have that great action is incredible. Because the biggest thing, the original trilogy, when they called Jedi and the battles, the lightsaber battles, Lucas intended them to be kind of like a callback to the samurai epic films. And this one does that too. It goes a little further with it. Because they don't do the original trilogy when they're like flippity floppity flipping all over the place and all this CGI. And really, some of the stuff can be fun, but at the same time, it loses a bit when they're so unreal. And this one, they're beautifully choreographed. Especially this one scene, which is just, when you'll know it when you see it, because I mean it is incredible. There's a scene, and they show the whole bodies. It's a wide shot, and you see the full bodies of everyone that's fighting. And there's drama in it too, because they're still doing that, like the drama, like from The Force Awakens. That I think I loved about the lightsaber battles were that they were so dramatic. Like in the original trilogy, there wasn't as much there wasn't as much crazy choreography. I mean, they have that drama, but they also have the choreography, and you can tell the actors that they have had to train really hard for it. And they don't hide anything, and because like it's a full frame. And honestly, like when I was sitting there watching it, like I had to I was looking, because like there's like multiple battles going, like there's like more than one battle going on, kind of like on the screen, and this like it's so huge that you kind of focus on like different parts of it, and it's just amazing. Like I really think it's the best action ever in the Star Wars movie, and best action definitely this year, maybe a couple of years. It's crazy. Another thing that I really loved about the movie, but I know some fans may not like, but I loved from the first film, from The Force Awakens, there was all of these questions that fans had about stuff. And some of the questions were kind of stupid, but that's what fans focus on. And I understand that. But in this movie, it's kind of like recognized that it was kind of stupid. Like, why you focus on that stuff? Doesn't matter. Here's the movie. Just enjoy it. Like, here's what matters. And I love that. There's such a different way to play it that most people wouldn't do. They would have, I know definitely Lucas wouldn't have done. He would have done something completely different with that. If he started what happened in the first film, they doing this film would be completely different. I won't mention exactly what I mean by it because it'd be a spoiler. But just what Rian Johnson does is that I really enjoyed. However, one thing I do understand, one critique that I kind of get, even though I love these moments, is that at a certain point in the movie, things are going down, and the resistance is on its last legs and trying to escape from the First Order. And they give kind of like a time frame, and it's like, okay, this is really important, we're all about to die, but we have to figure out a way to fix this. So then, as two characters, John Boyega as Finn, and Kelly Marie Tran as Rose Tico, they go on a side quest to do something for the main quest. And it reminds me of an RPG game where you have the main quest line, and maybe part of the main quest line has you go to this new area with this cool new town that has a bunch of stuff to do. And maybe you have to do something for the main quest, and then you're supposed to do that and then go back and finish the main quest line. And sometimes there may be something incredibly important, like the world's about to end, but then you get there, and this new area is pretty cool, and there's lots of stuff to explore, and there's other missions to do and other stuff to do, and then you have all this fun. You play in this new area for hours and hours, and then you finally did everything that's possibly done to do there, and you're like, okay, I guess it's time to go do the main quest line. And you go back to oh, it's time is of the essence, the world's about to end, we have to stop, and it's like, it feels like that for this. It feels like these scenes are kind of slower paced, and you're seeing this brand new world, which is pretty cool. It's like a casino planet, and there's lots of cool stuff with it. And I love some of the stuff is almost a little bit of callback to the prequel trilogy. And the other stuff is kind of like you get your bit of a cantina sort of style scene. And it's a lot of cool stuff with it. But at the same time, I understand why the people critique it. But the movie is already a little long at 2.5 hours. And when you have some scenes that are slower and kind of mess with the pacing of the movie, I understand why fans may not like that. And honestly, if I had to choose, I could have lost some of these scenes and gotten more training with Rey and Luke. However, things that happen with the side quest kind of really brings back a lot of important things to what the whole theme of the movie is, and a lot about the teachings of Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker. And there's some really important stuff in those scenes. So, and there's a lot of fun stuff in those scenes too. You know, there's like this horse racing scene and there's a lot of stuff with that. But when you meet these like space horses, they reminded me a lot of the forest god from Princess Mononoke. I mean, it reminded me a lot of that. I feel like some other stuff too. I wonder if Rian Johnson is an anime fan. There's a couple things that remind me of different animes in this. But that one is probably the strongest because it looked a lot like the Forest God. I'm like, not exactly like it. There's definitely different things about it. It doesn't exactly have like the face that it does. But something about it reminded me of that. And I thought it was really cool. But I mean, there's different things that happen here. And other characters, you know, Benicio del Toro is kind of cool. And the stuff that happens that is kind of annoying, but it serves a purpose for the whole movie. And I understand why it's there, but I also understand why some people would critique it. I honestly think that this will be my favorite Star Wars movie ever. Like, I have to watch it a couple more times before I decide. Because, I mean, the biggest thing with whenever you talk about a favorite movie is how it stands up to multiple viewings. And, like, some movies stand up better than others, even if you love them the first time you saw them. And I think that this movie will stand up really well, but I have to actually see it a couple times to see. But I think for my the order of my favorite Star Wars movies now, I think it will be 8, Last Jedi, and then 4, The Empire Strikes Back, 3, A New Hope. And this one is a little tough. It's like sometimes it goes around, but I enjoyed this. So I'll say keep the original trilogy in the top 4. So it'd be 6, the Return of the Jedi, and then it'd be 7, The Force Awakens, and then it'd probably be I don't know what you call it, like 3.5 maybe, but Rogue One, and then I'd say probably 2. I forget what the prequels are called, but 2, 1, 3, and that's just because there's a lot of stuff that 3 did, which I really didn't like. Even though in 1 there's a lot of really stupid stuff, it's still a fun movie when rewatching it. So I think that's my order now, and it may change, but I think that's my order. And it's really, I love this series. I love it like so much. I rewatched them all again before watching this new one. Of course, watching the despecialized editions, which are so much better. It doesn't even compare to the horrible special editions. It's really a shame that people, unless you know how to go on the internet, search for Harmy's despecialized editions and download them, and then I put them on a Blu-ray. Unless you don't know how to do that, you have to put up with those horrible special editions. It's really a shame. Hopefully Disney can eventually put out, the original version of the movies. So I'd give Star Wars The Last Jedi a 10 out of 10. I loved it. It might be my favorite movie of the year, and I would highly recommend it. Of course, if you're a Star Wars fan, you're going to watch it. But if you're on the fence, or I would say this movie is worth going to the theater and seeing it on the biggest screen you can find. And if somehow you've never seen a Star Wars movie, but you're watching my review for some reason, well, I think that even if you've never seen a Star Wars movie, you could start with this and really enjoy it. I mean, there are some things you might be a little confused by, or some things won't mean as much to you. But I think this isn't a horrible place to start, which is kind of funny to say. And it's just such a great movie. Not even just a Star Wars movie. It's just a great movie that I would highly recommend to everyone. And Disney will get all the money. And, they should, because they made this and I loved it. So thanks for watching. And check out other video playlists around my head, or subscribe to me over here. Thanks.